All right, on today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, we have reached November. So we will be talking about the Avalanche November schedule. The chief content officer of the NHL was on the 32 Thoughts podcast and threw out some really cool and interesting things that the league could be advancing towards. And that question that we've been teasing for a couple days now that Kyle threw out on a Twitter space, we're going to get to that too right now. Brand new episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. You can follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, opinions, Locked On Avalanche at gmail.com. And you can follow us on our YouTube channel over on YouTube. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Before we get to anything today, Shaggy, I think everybody wants to know, how did the trick-or-treating going? How did the trick-or-treating go, I should say?
The kids walked away with a haul. We timed it about right where everything was getting dark, and they hit a lot of houses when everybody's like just ready to empty their bags and go in the house. So they got a ton of candy.
And how did you do? And was it
I
everything that you had hoped it? And did you get arrested? Did you get into like shaving cream fights and toilet paper
had
fights and all that other
a
fun stuff?
couple of the adults call out the costume. They're big
Love it.
Macho Man fans and realized how old I am. Came home with a swollen knee. So that's a lot of walking.
Yes, it can be. So good for you, man. I'm glad it was a good day for you. And now we turn the page to November. So we will get into the Avalanche schedule here in a minute. But the first thing that we wanted to get into was we've been teasing it for a little while. And if you join Kyle on those Twitter spaces, he doesn't do it for every single game. So for games here and there, he throws out those spaces on Twitter, and you can just join with him and other Avalanche fans and watch the game and kind of just interact with fans. And you threw this out there. When was this, for the Kraken game or the Winnipeg game? I don't remember exactly when it was. It was a few games
I think
ago.
it was that Winnipeg game.
Yeah, it might have been the Winnipeg game. And you threw out a question. So I'll let you, ask it. And it was shocking to me that you threw this out there. But what was the context of it? Why did you throw this out for the people that were in the Twitter spaces to discuss?
You know what? I think it was actually that Ranger game because it came up
Oh, you're
when
right.
it was the Ranger game, when Georgiev made that save that I referenced in the follow-up episode of that game, when he was laying on his back sitting on the puck, and everybody in the Twitter spaces was talking about, I'm really coming around to this Georgiev guy. He's
Yeah.
really doing great. I took a step back and just kind of tested everybody's temperature on this. Okay, and you mentioned it on yesterday's episode how you're sold, you're bought in. Like, I've come around on Georgiev. You're
Mhm.
very on the fence, and that's a big 180 on your stance starting the season.
Happened sooner than I thought it would too. So yeah.
So you're not the only one who's made a 180. I posed to everyone in there, if the Avalanche kind of continue not getting the production on that bottom six, how tied are we to Pavel Francouz, and could he be a possible trade piece?
Mhm.
Everybody stop typing on YouTube. I
The
know, I
record
hear it.
scratched. Yeah.
I hear it. Everyone settle down.
Yeah.
There was this, now this is the biggest Frankie guy here. Like, I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
throwing this out there. Like, if Georgiev is actually all that in a bag of chips, and he's the long-term answer between the pipes, are we silly for thinking this could be a trade deadline piece? I'm throwing this out there to think. Just wrap our minds around it, because
Mhm.
I comment to everybody that comments on YouTube, and everyone's first scapegoat for the past 2 years has been Samuel Girard.
Right.
That's understandable. He's $5 million cap hit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also realize Josh Manson is just a $500,000 cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
and he's older, and he has a no trade clause? So
Mm-hmm.
he's just sitting there, and everybody wants to point at the 5 million, but we also have that. I didn't anticipate Josh Manson getting off to the start that he had, but that contract gets a little uglier the more things aren't happening.
Okay.
So, are we tied to Pavel Francouz, and could we be okay with maybe Eustace Annunen bringing back JoJo in that backup spot? Because
There you go.
deeper into the season we go, like, it's always wonderful conversation at the beginning of the year for the 1A, 1B goalie position. When it gets to the final month or 2 in the season, you're not going 1A, 1B. You want your goalies to stay hot. You
Mm-hmm.
might give them a night off, but it's 3, 4, 5 nights in a row, 3, 4, 5 games in a row. You want them to stay hot. You want them to see the competition. You're not really going 1A, 1B throughout the season.
You're not, but more teams are giving their A1 starter more rest, and you're not. I mean, when we had the Predators hosts on,
Mhm.
we were talking about that with Saros. Like, did they overwork him? Connor Hellebuck's another one, and do they overwork those guys? So is 60 games way too many? 65 games way too many? It should be more in like the 50, and give the other guy about 30, 32, somewhere in that range. And I think I don't know. I think the Avs, if you get rid of Francouz, I mean, the first thing is like, what are you going to get in return?
Yeah.
You're not going to solve a problem by trading Pavel Francouz. So I don't. I mean, I get what you're saying, because if Georgiev is that guy, is Francouz expendable? I guess in some capacity, yeah, but I don't think they want to, because I think they like having him there, and knowing that on any given day something can happen to your starter in Georgiev, and you're going to need him. And do you want to chance that? That is a big risk for they are comfortable with Francouz there. They're comfortable with his play. They're comfortable with his salary cap number. You know what I mean? Like, they are happy that both their goalies only cost them like $5 million or some, whatever it is, exact. They don't want. I can't imagine they would want to go out to get rid of him to fill a role, which again you likely won't be able to do, because you're not going to get a huge return in a backup goalie. But let's just say you do. Let's just say you get rid of him to get a fourth liner or something like that. And yeah, now your backup is guys that are unproven. I don't know. I think for those reasons, to quote the great Mark Cuban in Shark Tank, and for those reasons, I'm out.
I I posed this just kind of tongue in cheek. I'm not. I mean, everyone knows me. I'm not pushing Frankie out the door here.
Right.
But looking back, and we mentioned the calendar's changed. This is now November. Turn around. This is November. Fall. It's beautiful. No more Halloween. It's Thanksgiving. October was not great for the Avalanche, coming right out of the gate.
Yeah,
And
I mean, yeah.
and if this is something that could be corrected in November, we've seen last year what a entire month can do for the Colorado Avalanche. You've seen them turn it around. But
Right.
if not, like, this is a contract year for Newhook. We talked about that in the offseason, and he's been out there, but he hasn't stepped up like we like. So,
No, but I'm not going to talk about a contract for a new hooker at this stage in the game. He's a restricted free agent, so I want to see what he's got for the duration of this year before we really go down that road.
and same with Kaut.
Kaut could be a trade piece. I mean, he's restricted as well, and that's the thing. Like, if you were to just want to trade Francouz to fill in some other pieces, you'd have to package him with something.
Yes.
Um, And maybe a team maybe could be high on Count just because maybe give him a different atmosphere and maybe he can produce. You threw out Sammy Gerard. I'm sorry, people. I know a lot of people think he could be trade bait. Maybe he could be
Yeah.
trade bait if it's a big name guy. Maybe if you're going after one of the Chicago duo, and they want Sam Gerard, maybe you do that. But I think the big reason why I wouldn't do that if I were the Avalanche is because now you could have gotten rid of Sam Gerard and kept Nazem Kadri.
Yeah.
So now if you're gonna give up on Sam Gerard, even if it's at the trade deadline, that's a that's a 1-2 punch right there. Because losing out on Kadri because you wanted to, if you're keeping Sam Gerard, he could easily been moved to free up that much money, and Nazem Kadri is still here. And now 6 months later, you're saying like, yeah, we're going to give up on you. Then it's just it would be a bad move to do it later when you could have done it over the summer to keep a integral part of your team.
And I bring up this whole conversation just to kind of almost like It's a Wonderful Life. Like this
Yeah.
is like it's easy to complain about how the Avalanche are playing right now, and that's understandable, especially after the New Jersey New York game. It's easy to do that. And I'm kind of explaining like why our point is guys have to step up instead of, well, this guy needs to go out, because that's what you hear a lot of Avalanche fans doing. We need to get rid of this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, put
Yeah.
them far, far away. No,
Mhm.
if we do that, if you look at the cap friendly, what this team is constructed like, there's some no move clauses that hinder that. There's some contracts that hinder that. And then Francouz is going to be one of those that people are kicking the tires on. So if you want
Could
pieces
be.
moved, the guys that you just don't like, that you have a beef with for some reason, that's also going to have to be lumped in with a higher piece, because that piece alone is not going to be enough to justify a deal. So I'm putting all that out there. Do you believe in this team enough after everything they proved last year, even though they're not constructed exactly the same,
Mhm.
to pull themselves out of this rut? Because if you're going to move pieces, other pieces have to go with it. And are you okay with that?
For me, I like the team that's out there is not the full team. It's just not like if we didn't have injuries and things like that, I still wouldn't be making moves now. We're just turned the calendar to November.
Yeah.
Like moves are not going to be made, and we're pretty much just bringing this up because it's kind of fun to talk about. So it's fun
Yeah.
to play GM and move pieces around if need be, but none of it's going to happen right now because it's November 1st, and you don't have Gabriel Landeskog, you don't have Darren Helm. Valenchuskin's been out a few games, so like this is not your finished product. If it were, and you had the October that you had, you're still not making moves because we just got to get, everybody's going back to last year. Look what happened last year: 4-5-1 for your first 10 games. We're one loss away in regulation for that being the same exact first 10 games. So nobody's like panicking, but do you have to? I mean, if you're GM, you always have to be forward thinking and throwing this stuff kind of out there. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to really right now gauge where the Avalanche are going to be by the trade deadline, and you would have to think that they would be buyers again, because if you're in a win now mode, and they are where we think they should be around the trade deadline. They're going to add some pieces here and there, but what have they done the past number of years? It's those role players.
Yep.
They don't go for the big name. Everybody's always throwing out there right now the Taves from Chicago, and like that. Those could be big moves out there. Like I'll believe it when I see it when the Avalanche pull in a big name like that, and Kane as well.
Yeah, you remember the offseason where we had Chris Kreider as a lock?
Yeah, Chris Kreider. I mean, how many times was Taylor Hall coming over?
Yeah.
People wanted to throw around Sidney Crosby because of the connection to Nathan McKinnon. Like even last year with Claude Giroux, I think the Avs were in on him and it was pretty much up to him, but they couldn't land him.
Yep.
So I'm not saying it can't happen, but the Avs don't go for those guys. They have their big names, and their big names are in the prime of their career. Cale Makar's not even in the prime of his career yet. So they're not that's not A1 on their list to go after those guys. So because of that, if they really feel like, if someone is saying like, we want Pablo Francois, and what they're getting in return mixed with something is something that they really feel could make them better, maybe they kick the tires on it. I don't, I think it would hurt them in the long run. I do.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't see it happening, but I've been surprised before with moves made by team. Look at Tyson Jost. Not saying the trade was shocking. They've benched him.
Yeah.
In Minnesota. He is a healthy scratch right now. And if you remember, he was on the first line when he played his rematch game against the Avalanche. So things just go haywire quickly. I have no idea. But what do you people think? Throw it out in the YouTube comments. If you know what I know a lot of people are saying, get rid of Kaut, get rid of Maltsev and all those guys. Like, they might be moved, but those are moving out role players to bring in role players, which isn't always a bad thing. But what do you think of Francois? Could he be moved? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's hear from SimpliSafe. And before that, we're going to get into the schedule. Schedule has flipped to November. And then some really fun things that the chief operating, or is that what is it? Chief content officer from the NHL had to say on 32 Thoughts. Really kind of fun stuff. One in particular, which is crazy if they pull it off. But first, SimpliSafe. And like we said, the calendar has switched to November. And did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts spike nationally? That's why our friends at SimpliSafe Home Security are offering 50% off of their award-winning security system so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. Order your SimpliSafe system for half off today and enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind for this holiday season. SimpliSafe was named the best home security system in 2022 by U.S. News and World Report. That is the third year in a row they have won that award. With the top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust system settings right from your phone. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that we recommend. Get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. It's their biggest discount of the year, so do not wait. It's simplisafe.com/LockedOnNHL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, October is done. Let's move on from it. There was some good, there was some bad, there was some in between, but it's over. And now we are moving on to November. So let's take a look at what things look like for the Avs. We know their first two games are Friday and Saturday in Finland. You're doing 2 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. The first one is a home game.
Oh, our home game in Finland.
Our home game in Finland. And then the next game, same arena, same ice. That is our away game. So,
Makes sense.
Just so you know, those are the first two. And then the rest, when you come back from Finland, then you don't play until Thursday. So you have all that travel time. So you're off. So you're playing Friday, Saturday, then you're off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then your next 3 games are at home. So that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So after a long trip on the East Coast, traveling to another country, traveling all the way back, your next 3 games are at home, and they are against Nashville. The next one is against Carolina, and then the next one against St. Louis. Skip a couple days, and then you're playing Carolina again in Carolina. I will be at that game, believe it or not. Going to visit a longtime friend of mine, a podcast partner from yesteryear. So he lives in North Carolina. So I'm going to visit him. And there just so happens to be an Avalanche game. I mean, did I plan it around that? I can't say. Totally did. But yeah, he's a Carolina fan. And he's coming with, obviously. So we will be at that game. And then day off, and so I'm looking at it now. Three games on the road. So you got 3 games at home and 3 games on the road. Carolina, Washington, Dallas at home for Vancouver, and then a back-to-back on the road for Nashville, at home against Dallas, and then you finish the month off at Winnipeg. So in total, you got 3, 4, 5, 6 home games, 5.5, we'll say, because one of them is in Finland. And then for away games, 2, 4, 5.5. So kind of split down the middle. When you look at this, favorable, not favorable, better than October, what do you think?
Starting out coming back from Finland, facing Nashville at home. Nashville is a gritty, nasty team.
Yeah, but they're not playing well right now. What's their keep talking?
It's a good.
I'll look up their schedule.
It's a good welcome back. Stateside. Here's the Mustard Cats. Have fun. Like it's not going to be a fun matchup. Colorado and Nashville always butt heads, and they're always nasty. That'll be interesting. Then to flip it around and play Carolina next, which is a lot of fans. Stanley Cup prediction on that eastern side. Everybody loves what Carolina's doing and putting together.
Yeah.
So, and then to get tested again by St. Louis. That's a good home opener.
And St. Louis is not playing well right now. And as we record, I was actually watching their game before we recorded. Let me see what it's. Yeah, it was 5-1 Kings, and it's still 5-1 with less than 2 minutes left. So they're going to lose that game. But yeah, like those two teams that I think everybody thought was going to be kind of at the top of the standings. And here you go. Like we're talking about how the Avalanche being are not where we thought they would be, or I shouldn't say that, would be playing better. Those are 2 teams I definitely thought would be playing better with Nashville and St. Louis. So like you're saying, like you might get a really good output for them because they're not playing well right now and they have to turn it around too.
Yeah.
So
that stint in Columbus, it's in Finland against Columbus. They have to get back on track because you've already lost the game to New Jersey. Granted, they're a lot better than everybody anticipated. You dropped one to the Islanders. You've dropped games you shouldn't have. Yeah. So nobody looks like not a problem because you've already proved teams that you should easily take care of is an issue. And this team is not the team on paper that it should be. So every matchup is scary. And the quality of talent that you're facing this month, especially like at the back end of November, going to Dallas, that makes me sick to my stomach. I hate Dallas.
They never play well in Dallas.
No.
They don't. I think it's either the 10th or the 14th. The home game against Nashville or the home game against St. Louis. I think God, maybe it's the 10th. I'm wrong. I know it's one of those 2 days, but they're wearing their reverse retros for the first time on one of those games. God,
please, God, don't be against Nashville.
I can't remember. It's one of them too. I could be right. I think I'm second guessing myself now. Maybe it's the St. Louis game, but you're going to get it. You're going to get it in one of those 2 games. And then you look at, how many, like there's a good amount of division games here. You're playing Nashville twice. You're playing Dallas twice. You're playing St. Louis, and you're playing Winnipeg. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's 6 division games. So I'm not saying you're going to like get separation on those teams, but if you want to, maybe it's a little bit tough to climb the standings because those are teams below you right now, but you can at least make separation from them. So a good amount of division games. Dallas, you do 1 at home and 1 on the road against them. Nashville, 1 at home, 1 on the road against them. So yeah, you can get a good amount of division points in this month. And then this is kind of like where I get annoyed. Like, I like a lot of people have picked the Avalanche and Hurricanes for a Stanley Cup final, and their season series is over within a week.
Yeah.
They play on Saturday the 12th, and then they play the next Thursday, the 17th. And I just don't like that because it's like the team that is playing, or the 2 teams playing against each other in mid-November would be completely different if you had the second game in mid-March or something like
Yep.
that, or even mid-February. So I don't know. It's just kind of like the way that the schedule works, but not really a big fan of that.
Yeah, and if you take the month of November as a whole, you really don't want to repeat what you did in October because it puts you really behind the eight ball going into December. And you know the old line: if you are not in a good place by American Christmas and like American Thanksgiving, it's
Mhm.
going to be a rough hill to climb. November sets the tone for December, and December is where you really want to hit your stride. So November is
And
important.
we're not gonna look at December, but just if you just put November, December side by side, December is loaded with games. And this was
Yes.
similar to last year. November was kind of a light month, and the Avs had a good November, which took them into December, which was just chock full of games. And the Avs should be rested in November. You have a big break right now, traveling to Finland. I know that can wear on you a little bit, and then a good break coming home. And then, yeah, you have one back to back late in the month, but you have, there's some games here where you have 2 days off in a row. So the Avs should be rested
Yeah.
for the month of November, which is good going into December because there's a ton of games. Almost every other day you're playing in December, pretty much. So it's going to be a month to watch for the Avs. And if so far everything's a carbon copy of last year, November was a good month last year. So maybe they can keep that the same thing from last year going into this year and have a good November. So we'll see.
That'd be great.
All right. The last thing we want to get to today is the 32 Thoughts podcast, which is outside of Locked On Avalanche, probably the best hockey podcast out there. No, it's a fantastic. I love it. Absolutely love it. And they had on, I want to get his name correct, Steve Mayer, who is the chief content officer and the senior executive vice president of the NHL. What he does, I would love to have this guy's job, because what he does is he has probably one of the most fun jobs you can think of, definitely when it comes to the NHL, but maybe in the world, because he's coming up with content and different things to do for the NHL. So when you have like when he did when the Lake Tahoe game,
Yeah.
that was him. I'm not saying it's solely his idea. He has a team and stuff around him, but he put all that together. And if you want to go listen to that episode, it's a few episodes back. It's called Alligators, Fenway Park, and Around the Clock Hockey. And we'll talk about the Alligators here in a second. This is the stuff he does. It's so cool. But he comes up with this stuff, and he comes up with where to do the outdoor games. And he talked about Fenway Park and how typically when you have the rink in baseball stadiums, it goes from third base to first base, kind of like across the pitcher's mound. He's like, well, because we're working with the Green Monster, we wanted to kind of incorporate that. So he didn't want to give too many details because he wanted people to see it for the first time. But it's almost like they're shifting the ice a little bit, say in between maybe like third and second base. And then they're building what it sounds like, because he can't help himself. It's so funny. Like he doesn't want, he's like, I don't want to say too much, but then he says enough where you figure out what he's talking about. And it's almost like they're building a baseball diamond, but made of ice. So you can like skate the bases instead of like run the bases. And there's going to be just, how sometimes they have those like side sheets of ice for the outdoor games and kids are just out there skating. There's going to be people skating the bases. Like that's the stuff that this guy comes up with. Okay. Absolutely. I was listening to this episode. I'm like, dude, I want your job. Like, I just want to be an intern for you. So when you retire, I take over. But a couple things that he talked about. One was, and does college basketball still do this? They used to do 24 hours of college basketball.
Yes.
Started at like 3 a.m. and they ran games all day long for 24 hours. They still do that?
Yes. Last I checked, I believe they still do.
Okay. That's on the table. That is on the table for the NHL to do a like opening. I don't know, be opening. It might have to be early in the season. You couldn't slap it somewhere in the middle. So it would have to be somewhere in the like beginning of the season where you'd figure it all out and do a 24 a 20 a day full of hockey.
Sign me up. I will take those days off of work. I will fake whatever sickness I need to. I will sit there, kiss my kids on the head and say, "Go play with your mom." Go to your
Yeah,
mom's house, and I will watch hockey for 24 hours in a row.
I think that would just be that's a brilliant move. He
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about what we have talked about, doing an original six tournament. Didn't say if it was at the beginning of the season or where it would be fit in the schedule, but some sort of tournament for. And I say tournament, it's basically just the way the schedule works is they would
Yeah.
all play each other, in a round robin type of thing.
Did he say our names? Because that was a really good idea.
No, did not give us cred for that, but that's okay. That's all right. We know who came up with the
It's
idea.
all right, Steve.
um, he talked a lot about how the NHL has done a really good job of not forcing players, but maybe it's just like a natural progression of because like the league gets younger, and how social media has really kind of taken to the younger generation, obviously, and these younger players, and how people like Trevor Zegras are
Mhm.
just out there on social media. He did mention by name Cale Makar, and
Mm.
how it was very, very interesting how they talked about him, that it's almost like they're working with him to have him be more social on like social media, because he's not really, when you think about, like, if you follow,
Yeah.
he does nothing on Twitter. He has a Twitter account, but he does nothing on there. He has an Instagram account and he puts stuff up there occasionally, like every once in a while he puts stuff there occasionally, but he is not posting like day in and day out. I mean, I think Landeskog's pretty good with
Yeah.
posting stuff to social media. Um, but I mean, nobody else on the Avalanche really jumps out at me as posting like all the time. But yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking about Cale Makar on Twitter. It's got to be like everybody's first time on Twitter. You remember when Twitter first started? Everybody was basically just like going to here, and it was just like status updates. I feel like Cale Makar's
Totally.
would be like going to Tim Hortons today.
Very vanilla.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Bought a
like
smoothie.
yeah, 2 for 1 on the Timbits today.
So, but he talked about that, how they're trying to get players to be more just out there, put yourselves out there more. And they did talk about Makar in doing that. They talked about collaborating with other leagues, namely UFC by name.
Ooh,
Yeah, he's like, we have a lot of guys that are UFC fans, and we want to try to figure out something to do with that. And then maybe the most interesting one was at this year's All-Star game, which is in Florida. And I said, the title of the episode is Alligators, Fenway Park, and Around the Clock Hockey. Again, he couldn't contain himself, and they kept calling them meat pucks, but they basically are hamburgers. And one of these skill competitions is to fire hamburgers, aka meat pucks, into the mouths of alligators.
can I be an alligator? I'd
How
sit
they
in the
are going to
water.
do this, I don't know. I don't know if I can't wrap my head around how this will even look.
You can't tell me there's not gonna be a Happy Gilmore or something tied to this.
Well, they did their Happy Gilmore with Lake Tahoe, because that was on a golf course, so that was perfect. And he was a hockey player. That
Yeah.
was perfect. Happy Gilmore. With this, I mean, how
Get
I
Carl
don't even
Weathers
care.
out there.
I, I don't even care how the scoring goes. I don't even care who wins this thing. I just want to see NHL players firing hamburgers into the mouths of alligators. Are you kidding me?
And, like, the sun parts and, like, the ghost of Steve Irwin smiling in the clouds.
Oh, with the hand, yeah, yeah, with the hand, and he's buddies with the alligators again.
Yeah. Oh, this is
So that's
great.
true. I didn't even think about that. That's what you were referencing with the Happy Gilmore thing. Okay, you could have that side of Happy Gilmore with the alligator. Oh my god.
Yeah, you could do stuff.
It's a really, really interesting podcast. He
Interesting.
gets into a lot of things on what the league is doing. He said something like, there's some people who don't like the Winter Classic. I don't know who those people are. I absolutely love it. And he basically said that's going nowhere. So if that small group of people who have a loud voice of like, we don't like the Winter Classic, it's you're overdoing it. Don't worry about it because it's going to. I absolutely love it.
That's
Absolutely.
preposterous.
Yeah. Great episode. Go check it out. Alligators, Fenway Park, and Around the Clock Hockey, because there's a lot of stuff. It's just nice to know that, the league is not standing pat. Things are looking good, but they're constantly trying to progress it in so many different ways, and kind of fun things like that. Fun atmospheres like for the All-Star game, and then real one, meaningful games like the Winter Classic, and kind of just doing cool things revolving around that. So great episode. Go check it out. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. I believe we are recording the episode with Jay from Locked On Blue Jackets tomorrow, but that might not come out until Thursday. We're kind of going to release it a little bit closer to the game. That's the plan right now anyway. But either way, we will be back tomorrow with a fresh episode of anything that's going on while the Avs are over in Finland. They have landed and practices are happening. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. Obviously, that is always appreciated. For Mr. Kyle Sullivan, Shaggy Von Doom, I am Chris Maselli, and this is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.